four of us there, standing on the dock. That's our ship at the. That's our ship there. Here's the dock here. That's in San Fernando. This at, oh, this is in Tsingtao, China. Here, this is. I don't know if you can see that one or not, but that's Shishiri Maru. That's in Tsingtao, China, and they were loading up Japanese civilians to take them back to Japan. I showed the. I don't think it's. I'll go over this some other time. Back when we were going, we still traveled without lights, and then after the war was over. But on October 9th, in the middle of the night, it must have been about 4:35 in the morning, it was still real dark, and we were given a challenge by a shore station with bright lights to identify ourselves. Well, we still were under orders to keep our lights off, and it just so happens that our signal lights, we have infrared covers over all of our lights, and the only way you can see is to have it's like binoculars, and you could pick that light up. And that's the only way we sent messages. So the guy whoever was on the light was letting us know that he's given us a challenge for the last time, and by that time the commanding officer came through to go ahead and take the covers off our searchlight and our signal light, and to get past him, which it did, but yeah, it's a little bit tight there for a couple of minutes. The rest of that trip was sort of uneventful, however. There's what they're not. After we passed Corregidor, we went on into, or up, I should say, in this case here, to San Fernando, and parked at the docked at the third docks there, and I forget whether we were taking things in or out. I'm quite sure we were bringing something in to there. But while we were there, they allowed us to have liberty, and that's when I went over and I did take some pictures of the bombed out Catholic church, their jail, which was bombed out, and there was a little girl playing in the rubble. I took a picture. I had a picture of her there, and we went down to South Equator to Bougainville in the Solomon Islands, and while we was there, again, I don't remember right now whether we were taking supplies in or out, and but the Aussies, the Australians who were there with they had Japanese soldiers, the Japanese who they captured, and they were still using them like slaves, and very rough with them. They're rather nasty, those Australians, as far as I was concerned, because they used gun butts and everything else to knock the boys around, the Japanese fellows. And I just didn't believe what they should be doing that. We left Bougainville and went up to Manus Island in the Admiralties, and there we were given leave also. That's where the captain was coming in too fast for the wharf, and our ship plowed right through it and knocked it over. So it didn't make the people on the island there too happy, I don't suppose. We went over and did swimming there. Manus Island was farmed for coconut trees for the coconut oil by the Palmolive Peak Company, who had planted all of them. It was a pretty island, rather hot. Then we went up to Samar in the Philippines. When we went back to Tsingtao, China. From Tsingtao we went to Sasebo, Japan, and then we went up to Vladivostok, Siberia, and we were to evacuate a naval aerologist group that was stationed there during the day. They were stationed in north of Vladivostok on a place called Harusk, and that was took 9 days or something like that for them to come down by train because of the snowstorm.
Now, back in Tsingtao, didn't you need a two-stain?
Yeah. Is it still going?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. A schoolmate of mine, Richard Toustain, when I went ashore in Tsingtao, he was storekeeper, and they were loading his ship up with provisions, and so I got a chance to see him while I was there. So back in Tsingtao also, I met a fellow who was a platoon leader of mine over when I was going to boot camp, and he picked me out of the crowd, and he was riding by in a rickshaw. He jumped out, came over to see me. I was sort of surprised.
Other things you can remember from Tsingtao? You're saying about a church?
Well, the Catholic Church in Tsingtao, that's this. It's a beautiful church, and went up into it, and right up on that crossover where it went from one tower to the next, there were Kay Crandall and myself. We'd gone up there they had a real small ladder to go up in there with. It was sort of scary. This is the church that would be right up in here. This is an intersection in Tsingtao. There's a street that went across there, and then there's this. Oops, I gotta get that up. There's rickshaws in there too, you can see them. This is on top of This is the Crow twins and myself. I guess I'll take these pictures some other time and I'll show them. Now that place in Korea that I was talking about, this is the bay here, as it was when I saw it. Now that's taken from this next picture is the one that Tom took of the same place. This is our ship out in the bay in just off of Jensen. Well, I'll try to think of some more things, and then I'll write them down. And
okay, how about any memories from Sasebo or anything like that?
well, there are a lot of prisoners there, but
you never got shore leave or anything?
no, we weren't there long enough.
How about Vladivostok?
Vladivostok, they let us go ashore there with the understanding that if we got out a line, they would put us in prison. There was somebody following you. Every place you went, there was somebody following you. They're usually their army, and a few of them might be just inquisitive Russians. Kay and I walked to the top of one hill there, and they came and shoot us away, but not before we saw that there was it looks to me like there was a concentration camp. There was buildings painted sort of a funny green with high fences all around it, but they ushered us away from there. The embassy there in Vladivostok, there was a telephone booth just outside of the entrance where you walk into the embassy, and every time one of us fellows would walk in there, this Russian guard would go over and telephone in, and I assume just letting headquarters know what we were doing.
You also had talked about the Goldhorn Cafe.
Yeah, Goldhorn Cafe was a sort of an upstairs saloon, and they did put out a nice batch of stew. Didn't know what the meat was made, what kind of meat it was, but it tasted all right. Their cheese was something to behold. It was real stinky. Never had anything so stinky in all my life. They didn't allow any drunkenness there, and as soon as any of our fellows were getting a little bit tipsy, they told us to take them back to the ship. Don't let them come back ashore again. So that's what I had to do. We went to a movie over there. I always remember Deanna Durbin in Springtime. So then but you had to wear your coats. It was 65 below zero the whole time we were there, and while the movie was playing, and where the projection lights came from the movie projector, you could see smoke and you could see vapors from people's breath going up. It was so cold in there. In the port of Vladivostok, we saw a lot of the Lend-Lease destroyers and ships and patrol craft and like that the United States gave to Russia to help fight the war with.
You had one time you had mentioned about somebody from your ship dancing with one of these fellows who had the big boots on.
Oh yeah, his name was Whitey France. He was a little bit inebriated, and when the Russians dance, they most always, it's like a polka, but they was in a certain part of the dance they stop, bounce or hit the floor 3 or 4 times, and then kick each other in the shins. But thing is, with the Russians, they had boots, real heavy boots, so they never hurt each other. But when they kicked when they got some of our guys to dance with them, the men danced with men, it didn't make a difference to them. But when they'd stop and stomp and they kick our guys in the shins, well, they had no protection. So Whitey France got mad, and he was going to haul off and slug the guy, because the guy would stop ever so often and kick him in the shins. So he was a little put out about it. When we went, there was a young Russian sailor who evidently had been to the United States a few times, and he's in the Merchant Marine, and he liked to pat himself on the back to let his own people see that he could speak English. But his English was 4-letter words and such in the filthy gutter type language. So every other word was a dirty word. Well, he took it upon himself that he was going to escort us around Vladivostok, and because he felt as if it made him a pretty good guy in the eyes of his friends. And so we told him we wanted to go see a movie. So he took us to a place with a big flat wall. You had the front of the building. It didn't have any windows or anything, but just a little hole in the wall where you bought your ticket. And then you walk down 2 or 3 steps and you go through this little door, and then you're into the theater. The theater was 65 below zero outside, and it was about like same on the inside. Well, we had when you get cold, sometimes you have a problem going finding a bathroom, and so we asked this fellow where the bathroom was, and after letting him know what our problem was, he took us off to one side of the building and down a circular stairway up, all made of stone. Reminds of an Errol Flynn movie where they do the sword fights and that, going up and down. And he just pointed down below, and there was about a 25-watt light bulb going down there. And so when we got down there, here was men and women together, just standing there, and there was 2 doors with the Russian writing over each door. And one of those doors was for the men, one's for the women, but there's no way we could tell. We didn't want to go in the wrong door, so we decided we'd have to wait until the door, we'll see who came out of which door. Well, it turned out it was a man came out of the left door from us, and so we were able to find our way in. That was an undescribable experience, however, especially inside the place. We met a couple of 2 or 3 young ladies who were graduates of the University of Leningrad, and they wanted to try out their English talking to us, but the soldiers came up and made us move because they didn't want us talking with their girls. There was when we came back to the ship once, there was a Russian that went on. Mind you, this is 65 below zero, and I think this Calvi, a senior signalman of ours, who was just a little bit happy from vodka, and there was a Russian that came out from, this was down on the docks. He came out from a doorway and gestured that he wanted to buy Calvi's shoes. And Calvi was saying no, but the guy pulled out a $50 American bill. Well, Calvi couldn't resist it. He took his shoes off, gave them to the guy, grabbed the 50, and ran aboard ship as fast as he could get up there. So he had $50 and no shoes. Well, $50 is a lot of money. Didn't mean it, probably didn't mean a thing to the Russian.
Of course, you could get some aboard ship.
Oh yeah, he was just worried about between the dock and there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if he was the one or not. It was with a group of guys that came aboard ship, and you can't bring any liquors on board ship. He strapped 4 bottles of whiskey or vodka to his legs, each leg, and pulled down his dress blues leggings, and went. But he opened had a bottle in his hand a bottle full of water, a decoy-like thing. He came up and they said, "You got any liquor?" He says, "Only just a little bit left." And they demanded that he take it out, and so he took it out, and they were looking at this bottle, so they threw it in the bucket they had there and told him, "Get on." So he got on, and he still had so he sort of threw them off. He had 4 bottles of whatever it was, probably vodka.
This would be skipping to another point, but at one point you talked about where some fellows at a train station or something were selling a Japanese rifle.
That was in, well, that's France again. That's WWII, France. He and another guy we had gotten some souvenir Japanese rifle and bayonets while we was in Korea. And we were in the train station in Los Angeles this is when we were going to be discharged, and they were sending us back to Great Lakes, Illinois. And there was a fellow come up there and wanted to buy the rifle, Japanese rifle, and he said he couldn't part with it because it meant quite a lot to him, and that he'd lost his buddy, and the Japanese he killed the Japanese who was at fault. So this meant quite a lot to him. Well, the guy made him quite an offer he couldn't refuse. back then it was, and $7,500, something like that. So he finally said, well, I need the money pretty bad, I'll take it. The fellow was happy, but then he divvied up with his friend who was with him, and they pulled out another rifle.
Already for the next guy.
Yeah. And I don't know how many rifles he had, but he was selling them all for about 75 bucks a piece. And of course they were authentic rifles.
What, they came from the Japanese who had been stationed in Korea?
Yeah. Yeah. Now the rifle that I have is, see, they took and put the grinder to a lot of them. They took that Rising Sun.
Yeah.
Well, mine hasn't yet. I purposely looked to make sure I got one that wasn't.
Why did they do that, do you know?
I have no idea.